It all began in 1925 when Reza Shah first came to power. It was the year he became Shah. Shah is a Persian word that means king, in case you're wondering. Reza Shah made big changes to a previously very religious Iran. Reza Shah built big cities and used Iran's oil to bring wealth to Iran. In addition, he also gave women more rights than before, like the ability to vote and hold a job. Yay! Reza Shah wasn't really a religious guy, so under his rule, Iran wasn't as religious as before either. Reza Shah stayed in power until 1941. 1941 was the year he was removed by the English and the Russians.
Hey, get out! Get out!
The English and the Russians allowed Iran to have some sort of democratic reform, until the people of Iran actually voted for someone by the name of Mossadegh. Mossadegh wanted to nationalize the oil industry. This meant that he would take the oil away from the English and the Russians and give it to the Iranian people, that Iran could have control of all the resources. At this point, it was the English who were especially displeased with Mossadegh for taking away the oil from the Western people to giving it to the Iranians, because England had just been devastated after World War I, and they needed the resources that the oil provided. The English then went to go find the Americans to tell them what was happening in Iran, because they needed help to get rid of Mossadegh. They told the Americans how Mossadegh was taking one thing, the oil, from one party to give to another. This made the Americans go, "Hey, that sounds an awful lot like communism." Subsequently, the Americans sent the CIA into Iran. The involvement of the CIA created a lot of chaos in Iran. In the end, they got rid of Mossadegh, but they put in a totalitarian dictator by the name of Shah Pahlavi. Next to Shah Pahlavi, Reza Shah looked like a harmless puppy. But the most surprising part is that Shah Pahlavi was Reza Shah's son.
Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi replaced his father, Reza Shah, on the throne in 1941, shortly before his 22nd birthday. He continued the reform policies of his father, but a contest for control of the government soon erupted between the Shah and an older professional politician, Mossadegh. Several years later, the White Revolution was launched by Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi in 1963. As a matter of fact, it was more of a reformation rather than a revolution. Significant reforms included redistributing land to peasants and farmers, and giving the woman a chance to vote. Soon it was as if the Shah had turned the society into a woman's arena. Although the Shah had helped modernize Iran, he still frustrated countless people because his family hogged millions of dollars from the government for their own purposes, just like greedy pigs. Moving on, after the Shah had ordered Khomeini to be arrested and exiled to Najaf in Iraq, Khomeini developed ideas which was political and religious for Iran's future while in exile. There were only three ways how the Shah was able to stay in power: brutal suppression of his opponents and political dissent, nearly unconditional support from the US and Britain, and the vast amounts of money brought into Iran through oil revenues. However, his power soon diminished, with everyone opposing the Shah, calling for protests. When he had tried to discredit Khomeini, the Shah most likely realized that he was losing power, for he had imposed a new economic policy in 1978, which was intended to stabilize and help the economy. Instead, it froze wages and led to a sharp increase in unemployment. After over 2 million people in the streets of Tehran protested to the Shah in 1979, he finally made the smart decision to leave Iran as soon as possible. Iran was now an Islamic republic. Boys and girls no longer attended classes together. Women and girls had to wear long, dark garments that covered their hair and body. Anything with a Western influence was now forbidden. Iran became anti-West. Fortunately, a year later, Khomeini announced that he would return from exile and was seen as the leader who ended the tyranny of the Shah.
Iraq and Iran had a war starting from September 22nd, 1980 and ending August 20th, 1988, which Iraq invaded Iran to steal the resources that Iran had. So many Iranians left their homes and families to fight against the Iraqis. Even people who were aged around 14 joined the war. The United States, France, West Germany, and United Kingdom provided Iraq an advantage in air power, missiles, and chemical weapons. They also got benefit from the financial backing of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Arab oil producers who also feared the Islamic Revolution. They were afraid about the Islamic Revolution compared to their countries. But Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, thought that conquering Iran when it got weakened by the revolution would be a good idea, but it was a miscalculation. And Hussein aimed to win quickly by concentrating on Iran's oil facilities, but instead Iraq's invasion stalled. The war seesawed back and forth for the rest 8 years of the war. The war killed more than 1 million people and millions more were injured or became refugees. And it cost both Iran and Iraq about $500 million in the war. Neither side could claim victory, even Iraq had a lot of supports from other countries such as chemical weapons and gained the upper hand on the battlefield. So Iran and Iraq agreed to a ceasefire in 1988. The Iran government faced an economic crisis because of its population growth rate of nearly 4% per year. The population grew while economic shrunk. The economic crisis was compounded by the death of Ayatollah Khomeini at age 87 in 1989. The war ended, yet there are still smaller wars going on between Iran and Iraq, enemies in heart. The end.